This isn't because it says so or because OSHA says it so. It's all right, this is the rule, but here's why it's the rule. Let's talk about why it's the rule. And you use real world examples to help explain that.
Welcome to the Canary Report, the podcast where risk leaders, safety professionals, and operational executives come for real world stories and smarter strategies to keep people safe. I'm your host, Michael Zhao. In each episode, I sit down with exceptional leaders who are transforming how risk and safety are managed. Whether you're a leader of a nationwide EH&S program in a high-risk industry, or you champion workplace safety across 200 retail locations, this podcast is for you. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Canary Club, the podcast where risk leaders and safety professionals and operational executives come for real-world stories, for smarter strategies, and to keep people safe. I am your host, Michael Zhao, and I am the founder and CEO of Yellowbird. Today, joining me, and I am honored to have him, is a gentleman named David Leff. And David is a Ohio resident. He is a veteran in the insurance and risk management world. He most recently has transitioned into a free agency because he is ready for his new challenge, and he made such a huge impact in the insurance and risk management world over the last 25 years. He's a great human being. I got to know him in our pre-call, and I am excited to introduce him. And before we start, I'm going to ask you, David, why are you qualified to be listened to today, and why should people take your background seriously? So tell us about yourself and what makes you you.
Great. Thanks, Michael. Pleasure to be here, and thanks for having me. Yeah, been in the insurance world now with two different brokerages for just over 13 and a half years at this point, and started in manufacturing. I've taken kind of an odd way of getting to this role of where I'm at currently. I started out at grad school doing some thesis research and became a plant engineer for a large manufacturing company. Became a supervisor for two different locations with that same company on second shift. Took over EHS for a facility, made some improvements, and then took over the corporate role for the last 5.5 years with that organization, where we had 77 locations in 11 countries and about 15,000 employees, where I ran environmental health and safety, and then worked very closely with our risk manager on property insurance and claims management and everything about overall insurance. I went to the brokerage after that, became a senior loss control consultant, worked for that location for 5.5 years, and then was at my most recent company for 8 years. The first 6 as the risk control and claims leader. And then the last 2, I've been the managing director of the sales organization. So both employee benefits and property and casualty sales, along with the risk control and claims group. So a lot of focus on a variety of different size clients, on risk management techniques, philosophy, understanding how to get to risk management, and incorporating safety, risk control, engineering, really anything that we could throw a wide net at and try to solve and help consult for companies to make them better.
Wow. And that, everybody, is why you should take David seriously, because that is a phenomenal background. And I actually learned some things even in the way you just described that. I mean, 77 offices with international scope and in a manufacturing world is very robust and very challenging. What kind of manufacturing was that organization?
It's all in metals. So we didn't melt any metal or make slabs, but process metal. So we made pressure cylinders, we made steel frames, we made metal grid for ceilings, and then all sorts of other little processes and way we process metal for clients.
Okay, so now I understand a lot more about, because you use the term pressure, you use the term metal, you use the term, not you use the term, but you implied for clients. And so clients probably had some unique and specialty needs as well, which probably brought unique and special processes to the manufacturing process, which is always a challenge for a safety leader. Whenever you're going international, also creates challenges. And so, wow, you do have a very, very interesting background. So one of the things that we talked about early on is I like to introduce people as the human beings that they are, because at the end of the day, we're all humans. This industry is about getting people home safely and to protect not only the the people, but also the company in the process. It's not an either or. You can protect an organization while you protect your people, and I believe that, with all of my heart. And so, along those lines, tell me about you as a person, your family. I know that you are a father, and so tell me about what makes your heart beat.
Yeah, I grew up in Central Ohio, and have a great wife and two great kids. One in college, one getting ready to move that way, entering her senior year of high school. So a lot of fun and excitement going on. Listening to your past podcasts as well, knowing that you've got the new driver in the family as well. So at least I'm a year past the new driver. But a lot of great stuff going on. So pretty proud of my kids and what they've been able to accomplish, what they're going into, and then a great wife for 22 years, and yeah, great here in Central Ohio.
Fantastic. And at this time of the year, it's a absolutely spectacular place to live. I've spent some time up in Central Ohio, and I know that you also have a lake place that you go to and enjoy. Do you fish, boat, anything like that? What do you do for fun when you go up to the lake?
Fish, boat, more projects than anything else. It's just continual improvements on the place, and we just finished a very large project there where my brother-in-law and I actually did the building. So a lot of great projects, a lot of good things going on there. We've got some boats, some sea-doos. It's a family place, and we've got 19 of us show up at the house every so often in various forms to utilize it.
That's fantastic. That is the one thing I'll say about other parts of the country. I come from California, and now I'm in Arizona, and I live in very expensive parts of the world. And not a lot of people can afford to have places that are not, they're just trying to keep their roof over their head. And you have to make a very good living in order just to do that in many of the places that we live. And so I always admire and have huge respect for these places where the cost of living is more manageable and people prioritize doing things for their family, like investing in a lake house and taking time to enjoy it together. So my wife comes from a place like that, and I've been blessed to be able to enjoy lake life because I married well. So it's a wonderful thing. So going into your journey into the insurance world, you were with a manufacturer for many years. You rose through the ranks, which is not surprising, and you ended up being the head of safety. And then being the head of safety, as we know inside an organization, you have a very deep relationship with senior leadership, the board, and of course the insurance world, because one of the main things within an organization, besides keeping people safe, is making sure that you are aware of the loss control process and make sure that we are keeping people out of harm's way. So, when you got into the insurance world and as a risk consultant, what area of focus did you start in? And then what area of focus did you end up finding your niche, if any? I know you could do just about anything, but where did you find your sweet spot?
The sweet spot really is the width, the breadth of everything that I've been exposed to for all the years. And luckily, working for the manufacturing company, I had a variety of experiences. We did our own return on investment calculations. We did contracts. We specced out material. We did drawings. We worked on cylinder drawings. We worked on equipment drawings and layouts and process and Kaizen and you name it, and success, implementing all those things in a facility and understanding how safety contributed to quality, which contributed to production. And if the focus was in the right areas, then you were going to be successful across the board. We found some best practices in how we managed individual facilities. Each facility had its own unique nuances, especially when you're working with a location that does slitting and galvanizing or cut to length, and then you go to a cylinder manufacturer and it's presses and welding and all different types of exposures or roll formers. And so you look at all these things and different processes, but they break down to very similar protections of employees and how the focus needs to be on the employee and then that quality. And so we were able to take that element and think about lean manufacturing as it associates with production and quality and safety, put some good programs and policies in place, and then really diving into the data on the back end and seeing where we are having those trailing metrics. And so we look at trailing metrics, we look at leading metrics, and then we started implementing behavioral safety into that as well. So taking all of that and bringing it to the insurance world, and now being able to walk into any type of manufacturing or type of operation and seeing the operations that they do and being able to apply those previous knowledge and history to it, it has made me successful with those clients and it helped them make them successful as well.
Now, when you were with your last, you were with a brokerage, correct? Not a carrier. And so you were, yep. So when you were meeting with clients and going over things, was your function to be a consultant that is billing for time? Was that part of your P&L, or were you looking as value add to your client to because you've offered their insurance and because you're a trusted person who understands this stuff, were you billing for time or was this kind of a free value add in the process?
It was both, actually. We had some clients that, we may not be able to step right in and be the insurance broker and then deal with the fee or a commission based revenue stream. And so we were able to do a fee agreement off the side and work for a client. We were an outsourced safety group for one client, and we've done it for a few until we were able to help them bring on somebody internally. And so we were kind of supplementing that. But for the most part, you really try to work that in on the front end, understanding what they're looking for from risk control services, number of hours, what do they want out of that overall program. And that's probably where I spent most of the time is on the front end, is understanding or helping a client understand what that risk philosophy is, what do they want to accomplish, and then how do we accomplish work through that together.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because we have a lot of brokerage partners, and they are truly a partner to us, where they know the areas of expertise they have in house, they know the areas of expertise they do not have in house, and there is a point that it doesn't make economic sense for them to offer this service to their client, but the client still needs it. And so, because Yellowbird's so cost effective, often getting somebody to come in and do a quarterly assessment or to walk through and do an NFPA, like a fire inspection. Having a very senior person that is doing that kind of work at a relatively modest site really doesn't make a lot of sense if you're paying somebody a proper wage. And so, but as a consultant, as a Yellowbird pro, you can go and do these, and you're going to make hundreds or thousands of dollars in a day, and you can even still be employed. And so we've been really doing a good job trying to get out of the competitive mindset and the competitive space with brokerage risk services and into the partnership and alliance side.
Yeah, the way you're set up is wonderful. I mean, you're looking at you have expert knowledge in certain areas that can add value to what either an internal risk control person has or not. So you're bringing that extra piece to the table or a little more knowledge to the table, and at the same point, you've got your volume of people out there where you might have a one or two, maybe a five-person risk control team. Well, it takes time to get around all those clients, and your network allows that to happen a lot faster. So bringing everything together at once from more depth of knowledge and then a wider be able to go to more people all at once really is beneficial.
Well, thank you. It wasn't intended to be a commercial for Yelver, but I sure appreciate it, man. And it's funny because I talked to a gentleman yesterday, and I really enjoyed our conversation. Just a really good human being, and like you. I mean, we were having a nice discussion, and I asked him how many people he had, because I think he had 29 or 30 offices all throughout just the United States. It wasn't actually spread elsewhere. And he said he has three uh, dedicated people plus himself, and they're and they're running training programs. And he says, so he's trying to train the trainers, but those trainers are not actually trainers. Their full-time job is something else, and he's trying to make sure that they do the job, and he can see that it's not going well, and so his people have picked it back up, just because if you're not a traditionally trained person to do this kind of work, you can get somebody to do the best that they can. Like I can have somebody go around with a camera at a site and record everything, and it's something. It's better than nothing, and but it's not a proper risk survey. you really need somebody who with a discerning eye who's done 100,000 of these over their career that can walk in and immediately go, okay, right over there, I can see in the corner of my eye a barrel that's right next to a fire source. And that barrel has, it's too close. Like just boom, you can see it. It's just natural that people do that. But the funny thing is that when I was talking to him, I said, how many miles do your people travel? And he said, I have two of the three of us that have 1,000,000 miles on Southwest Airlines. I'm like, holy crap! It's not 1,000,000 miles on American Airlines International going to Dubai. It's going between Pittsburgh and Florida and Pittsburgh and Dallas and then all trying to go home or jumping around and I said to him, I'm like, how are their home lives? And and he said, every one of my guys has really good supportive family and lives, but this industry is known for having marital problems. And he told me this. I did not you know, probe on it. And I said, I think about the value proposition that we're trying to solve for here. And one of them is right people in the right locations getting work and helping people become consultants. But one of them, caring about human beings, it doesn't stop at health and safety. It also means that my pros and my customers have the access to things to maybe have somebody be there for their kid's birthday party or, be home for your anniversary, and it's so unfortunate that it's the last part of business that leadership thinks to think about the life balance. And I'm not a big work-life balance guy. I'm not that kind of we all have to work our keisters off to make a living. And if that means that you have to work extra hours, then you work extra hours. I'm not the guy who is a big, work-life hug-a-tree kind of a person. But I don't want my people having marital problems. I don't want them missing birthdays. And I'm sure most leadership doesn't. But then they go, you have 3 people and 1,500 employees that you need to keep safe. You've pretty much said, guess what? You're going to be missing a lot of major events in your life unless they do something else. So that was totally a lead up to a question. You're like, dude, I thought I was on an interview. So on the question side is during your journey and with your services, were you in that predicament? Not with your family. I don't need to hear about your marital problems if you have any, and I hope you don't. But were you traveling a ton, and was it having an impact on you in the job that you were in at any point during this journey?
Yeah, the first brokerage I was at, just being all over North America consistently. I had trips that I'd go from Columbus down to Florida, and then immediately fly to LA, and then be in California all in the same week. At one point I got north of 60% travel on time. Had a phenomenal amount of days in a hotel a year. And my daughter, I said, "Oh, I'm going on other trips." She said, "You leaving again?" Like, all right, I gotta watch this a little bit closer on what I'm actually doing and who's able to go do it. So we were able to hire somebody else. I was able to help mentor them to take some of the lower level clients. I took the higher level ones. And then at that point is when I actually shifted over to the second brokerage and knew as I was building that team and where the focus was, I had to be very cognizant of the travel schedule. So I made sure that all the major life events were on the calendar. So if it's a game here and a game there, or and going through that, my son was on the golf team, and so, that takes a lot of time out of the day. I was gonna make sure I went to some of those events. So, I just had to build the schedule around that, and if it meant leaving early in the morning and coming back really late at night, then I lived with that decision, and being tired, so I was there the next day versus, "Hey, I'm gonna take the early morning flight the next day," just so you don't miss some of those things. It took a little while to learn that and make sure it, got put in place the right way, and, I've also helped a few people that have worked for me to manage that. "Oh, no, I gotta go do this. It's okay, but the life stuff is really important. We gotta make sure you're handling these things appropriately."
It's so interesting. One, I can tell you're an engaged father and that you care a lot about these things. And I will never play golf with your son. I'm going to tell you that right now, because if he was playing on the golf team in high school and was good enough to be in these tournaments, I do love the game, but I am not going stroke for stroke with him. That's for sure. Uh, is he playing in college, by the way?
No, he had looked at it that way, but decided that he was just gonna be a business major and go to a little bit larger of a school. So, but he's still playing on a regular basis, which is good for him.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, no, if he ever ends up in Phoenix, have him give me a ring. I'm happy to take him on the links. Um, and so one of those things that I find to be fascinating is the prioritization of risk. And when a risk consultancy chooses to go out to a location, do they go to all the locations? Do they do a sampling of locations? Are you trying to assess things by spot checking? And I find, this is a question, have you found as well that a lot of organizations have chosen to spot check rather than to actually have somebody on it at every location because of the cost of travel and time and resources? I mean, did you guys run that way? If you had a client that had 50 locations, that you would hit one or two of them, and then you'd make assumptions on the remaining, or how did you handle that kind of environment?
The data, and actually to start it off with, and so when we looked really hard at the companies and tried to get a the data says one thing, visually it's going to tell you something else. And then you've got to combine that together to make the real risk assessment. For example, the last client that had over 50 locations, we looked really hard at where those incidents were occurring, both injury and auto and product liability, you name it, looking at all the different types of claims. Who are the five worst offenders? Who are the five best out of that entire group? And then we identified which of those locations we were going to go visit. And we did a combination. And we highlighted, okay, where were the areas for improvement, or what were the things that were done really, really well in the high performing locations? What were the differences? When you highlight those elements, the data says one thing, visually says something else. There's always areas for improvement across the board. But then how do you work that in from an operational efficiency, operational success, and then safety and insurance success as well? From there, then it was okay. Now we're going to start spot checking some of these other locations. We're going to agree to 5 to 10 visits a year. We're going to try to group them together by geographic location so we're not traveling all over. And you really just develop the plan from that point going forward, unless something catastrophic happens where, okay, now we've got to go solve this one because this is all of a sudden something's happening here.
Got it. And so, like, let's just say, for random argument's sake, because I don't know specific, let's just say that you have a disproportionate number of forklift incidents, warehouses, you're having near misses, you're having, actual impactful things with forklift incidents. So you go out there, you realize that they don't have a proper program in place. Did you run training for that kind of thing, or create a standard for them, or did you find third parties, or did you how did you handle the risk mitigation side of that for these organizations?
So understand what the company had in place to begin with, and whether or not it was meeting the requirements and how they overall manage the program. Who was in charge of it from a site specific location, and does that ownership need to change? And then who owned it from a corporate location? And then really taking a hard look at that overall training program and how they were delivering it. The frequency, what type of training do they do hands on? Do they hold forklift rodeos for competition? Did they do reevaluation, and then really just take a hard look at how they're managing that program. And if it needed something from an external, then I had some partners that were able to travel countrywide to do forklift specific training. Because if they're having major issues, okay, we need somebody who's very specific in the forklift area to make sure people were doing what we're supposed to be doing. But it's really about, again, you start with the methodology. What do you want to accomplish? What's the data tell you? And then what's the overall program? You don't want to just walk in and say, okay, here's your new program. Now implement it. You got to figure out, does it work? Why is it working other places? Why isn't it working here? Now, what are the subtle changes that we can make to make it more successful?
Awesome. No, It's a man who's been there, done that. So I absolutely love this.
Yeah, forklifts a little bit of a passion one for me. I was disgusted by a few facilities that both in the manufacturing world and in this insurance world, and hey, we really need to work on this stuff. Here's why this is important. And the education piece is really more of anything else. And why something is a certain way, why do you need to do it a certain way? And you got to make sure you explain it. This isn't because it says so or because OSHA says it so. It's a all right, this is the rule, but here's why it's the rule. Let's talk about why it's the rule. And you use real world examples to help explain that.
It's interesting because the industry often refers to things as compliance. And compliance, in my opinion, is the wrong mindset to begin with. It's not about compliance, it's about human lives, it's about human safety, and it's about doing things the correct way. But the challenge that organizations have, and I respect this and I understand it, and I always try to solve for the underlying issue, is the massive amount of turnover that you have in the forklift operations themselves. It generally is going to be one of the lower paid roles. It's going to be one of the higher turnover roles. Sometimes you'll have, things that have to do with, not to be political, but you'll have people who are not necessarily citizens. You'll have people who don't show up. You need multiple languages so that everybody is trained properly. I had an interview or a discussion with a lady who talks about, and this is, people don't talk about this, but she talked about actually being able to read and write. And if there are people in the country still to this day that do not have the ability to read and write in English. And if that is the case and you have them fill out a form or you have them go through a checklist that they have somebody next to them that's helping them and they didn't learn the data and they didn't learn the processes and they're doing the best that they can, that is something that can be addressed if you recognize it as a challenge. And so it's funny because you said that you have a few different partners or a few different people for forklift and they'll fly around the country and do these trainings and so forth. And you think about the capital inefficiency of that. If you want to do something at scale, it's gonna be months or years if these people are busy to be able to go and hit all these locations. And then by the time you're done with the first round, you got to go back to the second round, and it's just this cycle of challenge. And so that's one of the things that I've been trying to solve for is, and if anybody's listening to this that's a forklift trainer, please sign up on Yellowbird. But I've been trying to solve for that because to be a great forklift trainer, you don't have to be that senior. You just have to have been a very focused forklift trainer. That's what you do. That's what you've done. And have a curriculum around that. And a lot of these things doesn't take a PhD. A lot of the things in our industry just takes a good, program, a good training materials, and a disciplined process for how you want to train people and how you judge if your training went well. And I just find it to be so frustrating sometimes.
Yep. The other part that I would consider it's ownership. Who's going to have ownership of this? Who has the desire of ownership of this thing? And some people are passionate about that forklift, and it might be somebody who's in the forklift fleet who's passionate about it. Great. Let's train them. Let's get them up to speed because they have the ownership of it. And so it's really who's going to take the responsibility to do it. And that's where I found the most success when I was able to give it to people in the plants, who had the ownership. Good. Now you're going to be the person signing off on the maneuverability test versus somebody else. I'm going to make sure you're trained to the T, but you're responsible for these other people, your colleagues who are going to be driving this thing that's 3 to 5 times or even more the weight of an automobile and can do some serious damage.
Absolutely. If you ever watch any of those things, and I have mixed emotions about those videos online where it shows incidents and so forth, I really do. I mean, it is a cautionary tale, and it is important that people understand the ramifications of falling asleep on a forklift and running into a rack that falls down. But somebody got hurt in that video and it's not funny. And so that's part of the whole recording a train wreck and putting it online I struggle with, but I also understand the benefit of doing that. I think there's a better way, but there is the scared straight aspect of that. I grew up in the generation that your driver's ed showed you red asphalt, and it was not. I mean, I still have some nightmares about those videos they used to show us in school, and I'm like, that's not the right way of teaching children how to drive.
I kind of like the animation recreations more than anything else. When something serious happens, you've got it on video. Everybody knows who that person is, unless it's you're posting it online. But somebody's going to figure it out, and then you got other problems at that point. But if you can do some recreation and talk, here's the situation. Um, I think it's a little more beneficial.
I agree with you. I agree with you. And frankly, having access to, um, I'm a I'm a big believer in online training for certain things. I think online training is very, very good, particularly when you're talking about things that you need to learn and test around data and knowledge of specific rules and regulations and compliance and things to that effect. But I am not a big fan of people who are operators doing online training, because the reality of your work environment is the reality of your work environment. And it's very challenging for anybody to get a full training that you're comfortable with on how to transfer that over to the real world practical elements. Um, from your insurance side of the house, how did you transfer your data that you are gathering and then the programs that you would put in place to help mitigate risk? How are you finding that the carriers were valuing that? And was it actually transferring into lower premiums? Were people who put these programs in place getting the benefit of that economically? Of course, they're getting the benefit of that because their people are staying safe and going home. Legal liability and lawsuits and all the other stuff, yes, they're getting the benefit. But from a practical insurance premiums perspective, were carriers open to that?
They were if you marketed the program, and so we had to get clients to a certain spot within their efforts and really show where they've put money into risk mitigation and reduction of overall risk, um, to be able to say, "Okay, here's the good story," and that's what we spent a lot of time doing from a risk control perspective, is to really get people to be better. If you think about the carriers, you've got underwriting every year. They look at where their biggest losses are. Here's the loss leaders. Go find me these 10 or 15 different items. And their loss control people walk into those facilities. They look for those items and they really gloss over something that's the risk to the operation. That's when we would go in, and most brokers do a pretty good job of this. We all cast this really wide net because of my background and the team that I built in both brokerages. We casted a really wide net with energy, waste, environmental, health, safety, property, security, cyber, engineering, and anything else we could get our hands on. And here are the things that are going to be risky to the operation. And now let's prioritize those. So once you start figuring out a risk philosophy, you have a company, what are you willing to mitigate? What are you willing to live with as acceptable risks? What do we need to make sure gets transferred in a program? Here's where we think your highest risks are based on best practices, where we know the insurance companies are going to look. And here are the things we need to put in place. Once we have those in place, okay, now we can go market or go back to the current carrier and say, look at all the things that this company is doing really, really well. They're focused on this. They may not gloss over, but they may not do hey, I'm going to put in a 500,000 or $1 million sprinkler system right now, but I've put all these other efforts into risk mitigation, fire protection, fire training. I'm going to have less of a fuel load in certain areas. I'm going to store things differently. Hey, that's an effort. So let's get credit for that. And that was always part of the selling point. Being a broker, that's part of the selling point there, to make sure that that risk control group, the loss control and the underwriting, understands that. And so, yes, there were a lot of benefits to companies that would, as long as they're focused on that, let's put some effort into this. They look better and eventually get better rates. Now, in the hard market, it's just less of an increase. So it may not have been savings, but in the last 5 years, it's been very difficult. As we get into this more soft market, yeah, there's going to be some decrease and some really good benefit to some clients here soon.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Brooke, carriers are still competitors with each other, and they have to compete for business. But then this is where I struggle, because you look at some of the NCCI data and some of the other risk data, they take such
swooping data points on industries as a whole, and they place you in that risk profile where you as an organization could be doing much, much better than those groups. And maybe your risk mod is lower than somebody else's, maybe even it's sub one. But at the end of the day, you are painted with the brush of bad actors. And that's just the nature of statistical pricing, and statistical pricing the entire industry is a statistical pricing industry. So it's understandable. And that's why I don't always focus on the lowering or mitigating the increase as much as I focus on the risk of what happens to your business and your people and lives if something goes badly. You're going to get the benefit of the offset on your insurance premium, hopefully, if we pitch it well. But the reality is that if you live the values that you have on your website and you do care about your people and safety first on the sign, then let's actually live those values. And then I just want to make it available to people who don't have the budget. Because that's really, at the end of the day, it just like everything else in society, you shouldn't have only the great, profitable, huge organizations have a safety culture, and those who are struggling have people who are getting hurt. And sadly, those are the folks that can't afford to have somebody who spends $5,000 or $8,000 to fly out to come onto a site to give a training. It's like, if you had a $1,500 training, yeah, they do it all day long, but they can't afford $6,000 with travel and per diem and all this stuff. And so that is one of the principles of what we're doing, is saying, look, I can get this done for $1,500 or $2,000 that used to cost you $6,000, $8,000, $10,000. And so hopefully that message gets across in this journey. So what's the next chapter look like for you, my friend? So what does you're gonna be out and about, you're meeting with groups. What are the various opportunities that you're pursuing, and how can I be helpful?
Yeah, so right now, looking at three different things. One being this managing director of a sales organization, been pretty successful with the group that I've had some really great producers, both on employee benefits and property and casualty. But we had a good methodology to build pipelines and forecasts and really going after the right size clients. So looking to do that and being a part of a leadership group and be strategy oriented with a brokerage for a larger organization that has many risk control people, where we can build a team and service these clients and get them better and do what I call the three Ps: the protect the people, the property, and the product, and really get better on this risk identification, risk philosophy piece, get companies better and be a consultant. And so I'm looking to, maybe lead a larger team there, or even going back to the client side and being this risk manager, director of risk insurance, and helping a company really get better in their own merits and be successful with a larger organization there. So those are my focuses right now. So that's where I'm looking right now.
That's fantastic. Well, whoever ends up with you is going to be a very fortunate organization. So I'm very excited for this next chapter, and I am also hopeful that you'll sign up as a Yellowbird Pro, because we need people like you that are available for consulting while you're figuring out your next full-time role. And I will do my very best to put your LinkedIn and your information on. I'm not doing my best. We will put your LinkedIn information and data on the on this episode. And I thank you so much for joining me today. I love this conversation, and you're my kind of human being. So let's get out there and swing a club sometime, and you go enjoy your family.
Definitely. Thank you very much, Michael. Really appreciate it. And best of luck to you and Yellowbird.
Thank you.
That's it for today's episode of the Canary Report. If this conversation helped you reframe how you think about risk and safety, please do me a favor. Hit subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody who needs to hear it. We're building a new category of safety and risk leadership, one that's faster and smarter. Leaders who aren't just empowered by tech, but whose wisdom is accelerated by it. To learn more about how Yellowbird's cutting-edge platform is empowering leaders to solve workplace safety and risk challenges faster, smarter, and at scale, visit goyellowbird.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Yellowbird pages to stay up to date. Until next time, lead with clarity, know first, and act fast.